Hello all. This is going to be a quick tutorial on how to make sure you're going to export your G-code files to the tool machines. And there's a few settings and a few tips and tricks that you'll need before you can actually save your G-code to your flash drive and move that flash drive on over to a simulator or the machine tool proper. So if you follow along, I'm going to give you a quick crash course on how to change a few settings and then some of the best known practices. First, I'm going to start off by going to the Start menu in the lower left-hand corner. This is the default location. It may be different on your screen, but you'll still want to go to the Start menu. And from here, I'm going to go to the Control panel by just typing in Control. And here, under the Apps, is the Control panel. While we're in this control panel, we're going to use the search menu to type in hidden files. And then where it says show hidden files in folders, we'll click on this. Now, this little option screen here is extremely important when you're dealing with file types in our particular program setting. So on the desktop here, I have a folder that I've already created, and it's always recommended that when you're working with Mastercam, save your file in a folder on the desktop. And then once you're done with that file and you're done using that file, you will copy and paste that to your flash drive. Now, that's the best method because sometimes working directly from the flash drive, there might be a disconnect or the flash drive might be not working fully, and it can cause those files to corrupt easily. And if it's the only location where you're saving your file, it might corrupt it permanently and you'll have to redo everything again. So it's a good idea to save on your desktop first before you go moving your file around. So we're just going to open up this folder and you'll see that there is a bunch of files here, but there's not a whole lot of files with a .nc here. You can see that I have a 1701.nc and then a 1709 that doesn't seem to have a file end, but it does show that Surfcam CNC code file type. Well, to find out a lot of these things, we go through here and we make sure that one, I'm going to display full size information, display a full path in the title bar. I'm going to show hidden files because we're actually going to need to see sometimes files that aren't typically shown to the user. We're going to show empty drives. And here, this is the most important thing. Hide extensions for known file types is selected. We want to turn that off so we can see if our naming convention is working. Then I'm going to press apply and you can see it's going to refresh my screen here. And now you see that there's an ECAM next to a lot of these. There's an STL file. And then down here on this file, you see that it says .ncc. Well, not every machine tool is going to like this end extension NCC. So I'm going to change that right now to a .nc. Now it's going to say it might become unusable, but I know this extension is correct. So now you see that it changes the file type. It doesn't use that same application. That's okay. So if I change it to .nc.ncc, you'll see that it will take this, but your machine tool won't. So you always want to make sure that you're not adding information where it's unnecessary. So I'm going to change that back to a .nc file. Now we're just going to go to Mastercam real quick. And I'm going to open up a K-block file that I did when I was a student. And we're going to export the G-code. And I'll show you a few things that you'll need to double check on your G-code export and fix before you start moving it off to your flash drive. So bear with me while we're waiting for this to load, and I will take you through the process. Okay, now that we have the file pulled up, I will expand it out to the full size here. Now you'll see that it looks like a huge jumble. That's because I've got a lot of steps on this K block. If I select each individual group, I currently have only display selected toolpaths on. I can also turn that off, but I like being able to go through to make sure that all my steps look correct when I'm doing this. The next thing I'm going to do is just double check my parameters and make sure that under my tool, I have force tool change on. This is very important for the work that we're doing on our campus, because we want to make sure that each of your steps can be selected individually. It's much more difficult to go back and fix a problem or restart a process without force tool change on. It essentially puts a pause code in between each of these operations so that you can go back and rerun those separate operations individually, or just have a nice pause to make sure your dimensions are correct on each step. So this one is correct, but I'm pretty sure this next peck drill doesn't have that selected. So I'm going to make sure that each one of these parameters has force tool change on. Force tool change. Here we go. Force tool change, rapid contract. It's also a good idea to double check to make sure that you have coolant on, because sometimes that also is something people often overlook when they're doing their work. Parameters, force tool change, just a quick look. Okay, we're good. All right, so those were all my paths. And you notice how there's an X next to these? That means they haven't regenerated their tool paths. And you will want to do that before moving on. So right here, it says regenerate all dirty operations. I'm just going to click that. Now you can see that all these tool paths have come back. So now, to select everything within this toolpath group, as you notice, it's in a same folder here. I'm going to select this at the top. And then I'm going to go to this little box with a check mark that says verified selected operations. I know a lot of people like to use backplot, but it doesn't give you your stock material to make sure that you're cutting the right material away. So I will do this process first. And then I'll full size it and kind of organize it so that I can see things a little bit better. You can also add your tool path or your initial stock in there. You can do a bunch of other interesting things, but I'm going to slow this down quite a bit so we can watch the process. So I do a facing operation, some peck drilling, chamfering. Now I'm going to go to the outside of the part. I'm going to speed it up just a little bit, remove that stock material away, and then come back for another cleanup. And as you see, I also did a chamfering tool on the outside. Now it didn't model correctly because I have control on and the model doesn't like the tool I selected, but let's ignore that for right now. So it looks like everything that I wanted to have done functioned correctly. So I'm going to close, or well, first I'm going to shrink the size, then I'm going to close this window just so that I don't accidentally close out of the program itself. Now, with this toolpath group selected, I'm going to click the G1 for post selected operations. There's another spot that you can do that with, and that is going to be under home. Nope, I apologize. Machine. And then you can also click generate here. So we're just going to do this. And in here, you'll see that automatically it will select an NC file and edit and ask, and then add an extension to it. We're going to keep these settings here and just press the check mark. That's going to ask where I want to save them. since I have a folder on the desktop, I'm going to go to my desktop first, then go right to here. And then I'm going to rename this to K block. Well, actually, we should really name it the number that we're doing. So I'm going to do 1776, but also add the O in the front because our machines will require to have the O and the .nc at the end of it. And it's got to be at least 4 numbers. Some of the other ones take 5. But look at your actual program number that you've signed up for. And then I'm going to click Save. I'm just going to start post-processing. Now, when you're doing this at the college, it will take some time. We have yet to be able to have students post this from their laptops at home. We're currently working on seeing how we can resolve that issue. So I'm going to maximize this screen. There's a couple of things that we're going to do right away. One, you'll see that it says 1776 here, but not here. This is the portion that counts. You need to have the O as an Oscar and then your number. So 1776 is the number I'm doing. And what I like to do is have the number, then say K block Wyatt Mustful. That's my full name. You can also do your student ID number if you wanted to. This information here is not necessary, but I would like to do, today is 11/1/2021. And the time is 10:48 a.m. That's as much for me as it is for anybody else that's going to be viewing your file. As in Dick, myself, or any of the other staff in the future may want to actually read your file before you send it out. And then I'm going to get rid of these file types because most of our controllers don't like the very long comments. So we're just going to get rid of that immediately. I also like to save a lot every time I make these kind of changes. I want to save before I continue on, just in case the program does crash. And that does happen often. Now, for our programs that we're doing, we don't necessarily need to have these number blocks. I typically like to remove them. But for the case of this how-to file, we're going to ignore these number blocks for now. There are a few things like the A access that shows up in a lot of this posting material that we need to remove. Otherwise, our machine tools will error out. So I just accidentally typed something. There you go. So what I will do is, let's see here. Can I do, okay, so under home, there is a find and a replace. So what we're going to do is go to find first, and then you'll see in this right-hand side, I'm just going to make this a little easier to see. There is a find and a quick replace. I'm going to go immediately to quick replace. And to find what, we're going to type in capital A, the number 0, period, and a space after it. It's important to have that space after it. Otherwise, there's going to be some what we would call junk data inside of your program here. And what we're going to replace it with is absolutely nothing at all. And just to kind of show you how the find function works, I'm going to find it next. And you'll see in the left-hand side, it's going to find all of those spaces where A0 period and a space bar is located. And now that's important because we're just going to remove all of these as if that was never entered into the program. So I'm just going to literally click replace all, and it's going to tell you how many times it did it. Now, what I like to do is just double check. It doesn't seem that there's anything else there with that. However, sometimes it might not have a space bar. So I'm going to delete the space after this and find again. Oh, look at this. It looks like it added unnecessary accesses or access orientations when they're going home. So now I'm going to replace all. It's going to replace them 8 more times. And you'll see that those are no longer showing, although it does leave some remnant code behind. We're just going to ignore that for now. There's a few other things that you have to double check when you're doing your programs like this. So I'm going to close out of this. And then actually, we're going to go back in and just go to quick find and then type in G90, G91. And I'm going to find all the G91s. And you see how there's a G91 here. Now, if you can recall, G91 is incremental mode. And we're going to want to go back after it does this move. And the reason why it's doing a G91 for a G28, which is a go home move, is because of the way the system works. If you don't have the G91 on and you tell Z to go to 0, it could go straight through the floor of the machine. And we don't want that to happen. So every time you do a home move like that, you'll want a G91. Now, that's a code that stays active until you tell it not to be active anymore. As you'll see lower after it does a tool change, there's immediately a G90 later. Well, process, it doesn't get stuck on G91. That's just me. That's a cautionary thing. And I also like to give it an extra space between all of these tool changes. And now that's the forced tool change here. It forces a tool change and then a safety block before it keeps going on. And that's good if you stop the machine or if you have to pause it during the night and then you start back up in the morning on the next row, then you have all this information and it does the safety codes without any problems. If somebody ran something between everything, you know, you don't have your safety codes, well, there might be a problem. So I'm going to now find the previous G91, just make sure I have that G90 there. I'm going to find the next one. I'm going to add another G90 here. Separate this, find the next G90 there. Separate that out. G90 here. Separate that out. And you see this M01, that is if you put the system into a stop mode or optional stop, M01 is optional stop. M00 is a forced stop. All right, and then I think this is going to be the last one. Whoops, G90. There we go. This is the last one. Now you see there's a home here and then a home here. Now I'm going to add a G90 here. And then that's the end of the program. Now this is the only one that's different because it's also homing in X and 0 at the end of all of the programs. So now that we're doing this, we may as well double check. Do these spindle on numbers look like they're right? So I'm going to go with an M3 and search previously. I'm going to double check. That looks about right. That looks about right. Sometimes you can find out that the speeds might not match what you need it to be. Sometimes they'll be in the 10,000 range or something like that. Mastercam is not always trustworthy for speeds and feeds. That looks about good. All right. So now that it looks like everything's okay, I'm going to close this and then I'm going to save again. And then when you save, you'll notice that all these green check marks shows you where you've made edits and where it's saved those edits. And as you can tell, there's a lot of X and Y movements here. It's not always necessary. There are some things that you can do to make these movements a lot slower. Dynamic milling can cause these numbers to kind of get out of control. So think about the process of how you're removing material. Sometimes just doing multiple contours is quicker and also easier to digest. All right, I believe this program looks good. All right, so now that we saved it, you can see at the top here where it says 1776.nc. I assume that this program saved correctly, but we're going to just double check in the folder where we saved this. I'm going to minimize, and then just to reiterate, I open up that folder, and then look, here's 1776. It looks like this program number is correct. Go to properties, and as you can tell, it does say that this is a .ncc. When you go to properties. Now, a way to find out if there's a problem with something like this, just to show you as an example, when I open up the properties, it shows that it's a .ncc file here, but anytime you see something that has multiple file names after this or multiple extension numbers, you can already assume that there's going to be a problem. So always remember, double check, make sure that it's only .nc, just as a matter of practice. Now, the newer machines don't necessarily require all of this. In fact, you can actually run file names with different extensions, and the newer controllers are capable of doing a lot. However, it's still best practice to still file things with the O, your file number, and have the period NC for numerical control. That's the standard FANUC file type. I'm going to press OK, press yes, and you see that it changes that back. Now, just to double check this file, I'm going to open this with a simple text editor. So open with more apps. I'm just going to go to Notepad, make it a lot easier. Okay, we do have the percentage sign at the top, percentage sign at the bottom. I've got my program name here, and everything within the parentheses is notation. This might end up being a little too long for the program. You know, I'm just going to remove this unnecessary little bit of information that's unnecessary. I'm going to save that file. Now, I can also backplot in these programs. We can actually close this now. And to do that, I go to the Start menu, and then I'm going to type Edit NC. And you'll see on most of these computers you will that have SurfCam will have an Edit NC application. We're going to open that up to do a backplot on this program. You can go through the file open, but I like to just grab and drag. As you see, it just puts all that data in here. Then I'm going to go to Analysis and Backplot. And as you can see, it pretty much just gives you straight output code. Now, it's not to be taken 100% literal. Your controller might not like this code. You won't find out until it's actually in the machine and you're doing your graphing on the machine before you run it for the first time to make sure that all the code's going to work. There are instances where certain things or certain moves, like a G3, as it says, cutter compensation changed with a G2 or G3 move, your controller might error out in certain things. And you'll notice a lot of times when you choose pocketing on Mastercam, you'll get a lot of errors. That's because a lot of people choose control rather than computer, and that's a software issue. So just keep in mind when you do backplotting, you won't really know until you try to run in testing mode or on setting graph on the Haas controllers that we have, if the program will error out or not. And in this mode, when I use the middle click on my mouse, I can actually kind of zoom in and take a look at some of this pathing. And it's interesting to see. This is a little different than I'm accustomed to, so I apologize. Let's see here. That's regenerate. I want to go back in steps. So I'm going to go all the way back. Now, your interface may be a little different. I'm used to these buttons being up at the top here. This is the newest revision of Edit NC. So there's some new tools here that have not been there previously. So just keep in mind some of these options might be a little bit different, but this is step up and step down. I reset it, and on the left-hand side, you'll notice that there's a highlighted bar on where it starts. And if I press the down, you'll notice that it changed to the next section. And we're just kind of going to go down block by block. And you see that it's giving us a snapshot of what's happening. Make it a little easier to do. Whoops. Side by side here. There we go. So I'm going to continue going down. It was a rapid movement. Now we're going to do some drilling. Chamfering. And now, as you can see, if I just press and hold, you can watch as it draws out everything. If I press play, it'll go through them pretty fast. But we're just going to rewind this movement, so it's a little easier for you to see some of these options. Press play, zoom up that speed. Look how fast that goes. So in my opinion, I should actually go back and change how this is removing material. I don't like all these weird movements, really. And as you can see, it does a lot of strange additional moves that are unnecessary and eat more time. And there's the K, and then there's the middle of the hole. So that's how I chose at the time when I was a student how to do some of these paths. There's a lot more that I've learned since to make this easier in a quicker operation. Just remember you're beginning, so it's okay to do sometimes weird things like this, but also remember that you can definitely cut down some of this time by making things a lot more simple. Don't always let the machine do the work for you, because this process ended up being around an hour and 50 minutes to do this cut. And you can actually bring this down to about 45 minutes for this one side of your K block. So now that we know all of this information is good, our file type is good and saved, I'm going to go and show you how we can save this file to our flash drive. So I'm going to open up the location on the desktop where this file is. And then I'm going to plug in my USB drive. And now remember, our older machines can only take a 2 gig USB file or drive size. And the best drive to get is a SanDisk drive. That's the preferred type. Now I know sometimes when we give out drives, they're not going to be the best drives in the world. So keep that in mind. I currently have a very large hard drive to plug in as an example, but this will do in the pinch. So I'm going to go down here to the Manila folder and actually open a second folder, find where in this PC what the drive is, and then let's see here, it is this one. So in here, there's a bunch of files. Ignore this for right now. This is just an example. I would take this file and drag it directly over. Yeah, of course, I can't do that because on this computer, I have security issues. So let's see if I can do that in a separate folder. Users, public desktop. Let's see if it'll let me do that. Nope, it won't let me. So anyways, you would copy that into your flash drive. And then looks like I had a crash on Mastercam as well. You would copy that over to your flash drive. And then when you're done copying over to your flash drive, you would go down here to this little guy where it says safely remove hardware. You would right click on it and you see how there's only one drive, but there's two types there. I go to eject. And then it will show that it's safely ejected. As you see, there's no more flash drive there. And then you just remove your flash drive. And then there is a process to the machine tools. We'll have a separate video for this at a later date, as I am not on site right now. So hopefully that gives you an idea of best practices on how to save and edit your NC files for the machine tools. If you have any questions, let your instructor know or give me an email or a call, and we'll help you work through things. All right. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great day.